Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and I've got Leonie here too.
Hi everyone.
And welcome. This is episode 2 of Laura and Leonie's Systemic Stories, Practice and Possibilities. Super excited today. We have guests on, so it's not just the Leonie and Laura show. We're here. We're talking to Dr. Kerri Webb and Jordana Rigby about their systemic practice at Arbre Developmental Paediatrics and Family Therapy. So, I've got a pull from the website, but we're going to hear more from Geordie and Kerri in a minute. But Arbre offers an integrated multidisciplinary care in developmental diagnostics and intervention, using a unique wraparound approach to the developmental care of children and families. And that's exactly why we want them to come on and share with us a little bit about their practice. So I was racking my brain about when Geordie and I met in particular. And I think, Geordie, was it when you came to UQ? Is that our first meeting?
Um, I can't remember. I'm so sorry, Laura.
I can't remember either, but I think
It's
it must have been.
it's
It was, I
definitely
guess,
the first time I've met you, Jordana, was at UQ.
yeah, I think so. It was my memory of you were doing a tutorial group and
Yeah.
there was a lot of helicopter talk that resonated. Yes.
And so that was probably like almost 11 years ago, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And Kerri, I was then trying to think about when I met you, and I think it was when Geordie dragged you to my clinic, wasn't it? And I met you for the first time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, through like a supervision relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which again I think must have been a good number of years ago as well, wasn't it?
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a couple of years before Arbre started. So,
Okay.
yeah, maybe 7 years
Six,
ago.
7 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So a long time.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I'm really keen to start it off by telling us a little bit about yourselves, who you are, and also like where you first came across systemic family therapy in your careers. And yeah, why you wanted to jump into it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to kick off. So, and maybe in two parts. So a little bit about myself. So I'm a developmental pediatrician. So what that means is I've done a medical degree and then I subspecialized in community pediatrics. And now I work and have for many years in child development and behavior. So I've worked for many years in government clinically, but I've also been involved in service redesign and change management and statewide services. And I guess now I am interested in the intersection of mental health and developmental, child development and behaviour. And so I do a little bit in that space, but my main, job place of work is Arbre. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Kerri. And Geordie, how about for you?
I think for me, I'm a social worker. So I went into social work, probably like most social workers, to work out their own families. So I always had a systems lens and was always intrigued by how the individuals were in their context, but also how they get stuck in certain patterns and dances. That was always an interest of mine. But I did an early placement in child development, I think my fourth year, and very quickly fell in love with child development as well. I think for different reasons, being interested in how different aspects of us as individuals bring us to the table and to our systems quite differently. And so I just loved this kind of both and with the individual with the context of the systems around them. So that was pretty early in my career. I got interested in that. And when I met Kerri as a student and made it my mission to then get into child development after doing the regular child protection and hospital and emergency and doing all that in my early history. So I've been in child development, for over 20 years in lots of different roles and different places and renditions. But about 4 or 5 years ago, we started a private child development service, which has been really fabulous and exciting. And that's where we've landed.
Oh, amazing. And Kerri, remind me, where did you first come across this like systemic family therapy frame? Was it when you were in child development working in the government or?
Well, so I think, child development sort of modern sort of frame is a biopsychosocial model, and the child or children and young people, present in the context of their families, or sometimes they're presented as the problem by their families. And I guess so there was that natural sort of, I think, fit. Biopsychosocial is very, systemic. And I guess in our medical degree and, later training, and this may have changed a little bit, I think, but when I was trained, we were taught a lot about assessment and diagnosis in intervention, and not a lot about sharing information in a meaningful way with families. And I worked hard myself on trying to make meaning for families in a way that was accessible to them. And then I guess along the way, I had the opportunity to work with some really brilliant family therapists, and I guess including Jordana as one of them. Actually, that's a bit of a funny story how we actually met. Yes.
Oh my gosh, tell me. Yes.
We love a funny story. Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm going to come off well. Jordana will. So Jordana was working in the service that I was working in as a social worker. It was a child development service, and I was had two parents in the room doing, my thing. It had been going on for, 10, 15 minutes. And then somehow it ended up with them in a raging argument with each other, with me, in the room. And I retrospectively was poorly equipped to cope with that. So what did I do? I did pause. I didn't lean in. And I was quite bamboozled by what was, coming at me. What I actually did was said, "Oh, excuse me, I'll just duck out and get some paper." And I rang Jordana and said, "You'll have to come down here. They're arguing. I don't know what to do." So that was, I guess, the early days of our meeting. But I think that sort of example of how, that happens, and it's bambooling. And I'd like to think I'd managed that much more differently today. I did pause, but that's probably...
We said a therapeutic break.
Yes, therapeutic break. I did that tip.
But sorry, if it makes you feel any better, I was in some training with the vet Rothschild, and she recommended that you make the excuse you need to go to the bathroom if you need to. Very normalizing. We all have to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's good to have an escape plan, right? In those moments.
Definitely. Yeah. That was important, and I could have had a better one, but didn't.
I love that. I love that core memory though of the usefulness. It's like the duo came together in a really good way, and it's probably continued ever since, right?
Yeah, and my core memory of that is to feel that I was respected enough for those skills that can often and are often seen as not that much. So Kerri has an amazing ability to equalise and to see what you bring to the table, not just with colleagues, but also her families and clients. So I think that was my memory, was to, I ran down with my tissues and my clipboard, and I felt very important. So I didn't quite have that experience.
I love that. Now, so from there, somehow you've now created this amazing service. Tell us a little bit about Arbre, like when it started, what was the dream, just to kind of like orientate ourselves to it.
You want me to go first? Yeah. Well, so Kerri and I worked together in child development for a very long time, I think nearly 20 years before we left for private. And I guess like everybody who ventures out into private, it's that ability to kind of create something new that brings together all your passions and your ideas and framework. And I guess we feel very lucky. Sorry, Kerri, I hope you do. But to be able to do it with a friend and to be able to do it with a like-minded colleague felt quite exciting as well, so that you weren't doing it alone. So we really wanted to emulate the child development development services that we'd worked in the public sector somewhat, and developed that into the private world, which was apparently quite radical. We did get a very dominant narrative that couldn't be done, that you can't do multiple clinicians for one family, and lots of sort of roadblocks. But we had had experience in the past of doing quite innovative and maybe flexible service delivery. So we look back now and wonder how we did trust ourselves. But anyway, we did. 4 years down the track, we've been able to do that successfully. And what we have is a child development assessment, diagnostic assessment arm, as well as an intervention, a multidisciplinary integrated intervention team as well, with a family therapy focus. The assessment, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that bit, Kerri.
Yeah, no, sure, happy to. So I guess it is multidisciplinary. So, there is that sort of systemic view of, everybody's voice in the room is important, the families, and, we have more, because we have multiple people in the room, we have lots of potential, I guess, for learning and sharing, information that can be, impactful. So we collect a lot of information initially from multiple sources. Then our initial sessions are in the room with multiple clinicians and the family. And actually, probably one thing that we're really proud of is at the beginning, we just automatically, said for our families, it has to be mum and dad. And that's actually amazing that we probably have probably over 90%. I'd actually probably say 95% of mums and dads actually coming, and sometimes they continue to come, to other appointments. So that's, I guess, there is multiple sources of information from different people and lots of voices. I think the other sort of ingredient is our systemic supervision. So we've, invested in that as a priority, and that's, been, I guess, core to our way of working when we, started and thought about what are our values, how does our service model align with that. So we wanted to be very family focused, and then we also wanted to I guess, build a workplace that was collegial, that could also give back to the clinicians that actually, worked in it. So all of our clinicians have a systemic frame that's sort of part of their, recruitment process to our service. So, and that has been amazing. They all work with families. And I guess the other thing that's been really helpful about our service context is that we can do hard things together. So if somebody has a hard session, there's lots of, it's not just support available, but there's a lot, that is available, but there's also a lot of reflective capacity in the team to help make sense or hypothesize about why that might have happened, and then to sort of give you a way forward with the family. So, and I think that makes for a really rewarding, professional experience.
It's like so many layers of you guys thinking about relationships, right? Like relationships on the ground with families, relationships as the team. I think that sounds pretty unique.
We spent a lot of time, I mean, this is in hindsight, but a lot of time on the model of care, didn't we? Which was probably ingrained into us through our government experience. But we've always had a very strong framework, which I think has kept us in good stead just every time we hit a hurdle, or when we're recruiting, or when we're tweaking something, it always comes back to that, which I think has been helpful.
Yeah. There's so much to appreciate in what you're saying, Kerri, about the service that you guys offer. And one of the things that really caught my attention was thinking about almost like a systemic culture in your workplace. in terms of, like a shared language with everyone. So I kind of was thinking either people need systemic training in recruitment or be willing to take on some systemic training so they can have this way of thinking and being. And I guess what's helped you keep that alive? What's helped you grow that?
Well, do you want me to answer that? So, I mean, I think we absolutely are passionate about systemic practice. For me, as I said, I got the opportunity to work with some very clever systemic practitioners, and it always seemed magical to me that how they could sort of have the hard conversations and then affect change. And I always thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to, do that too. So that was, I guess, the start of my own seeking of, extra training in that. So, which started in some single session work and then sort of very rapidly. And that was really appealing government-wise because, resource-strapped services need to make the most. But, that it just made sense to me. And I found that really important learning. And then it sort of naturally then flowed into the more family and systemic lens. So to answer your question, I guess it is a passion for that way of working, but it's also having seen the benefits for families that way of working, actually brings.
Would it be okay kind of thinking about the benefits to families? Because I don't work in child development. I work with kids and families and parents, but I don't work in that specific child development context. And so I was wondering if there was, in a general way, if you could kind of let us know how the systemic work influences service provision and the real benefits that you see for the people that you're serving.
Yeah. Did you want to take that, Jordan?
Well, start, Kerri, because I think.
You want me to?
You start.
Well, I think it just impacts from the get-go, from every single level. So, from the point of people bringing themselves, to our service. We used to joke at the beginning, where family therapies, it's on the roof. So, we're very overt about this is what you're coming to. We did understand early that people don't always read all the information you provide. So some people were a little bit blindsided by that. But, once they're in, we sort of, I guess, contracted that this is actually how we work. So what difference does it make? I think from the point that they actually first contact, there's lots of, worry in families about their young people, and parents bring themselves to admin differently, so we've had to work with our admin team about, how to manage that, but not just from how to manage it so that our families feel heard and respected, but also there's a boundary for our admin team. Boundaries always helpful, isn't it? And then when they're coming in, I guess, it is about diagnosis, but actually I think you can frame diagnosis as a systemic intervention in child development because it's understanding that young person in their context and actually working on the goodness of fit for that young person with that understanding. So we would often say parent understanding is an intervention in themselves. And then obviously in the family, it is, that's important in terms of understanding. We often get lots of little flags, even in the first session, that we now will lean into that actually, I think, really mean that the whole process goes better. Like whether they're really a visitor or a customer, how, whose idea was it to come, and actually, talking about that up front. If there's hesitancy about diagnostic understanding, what would that be like? If there was a diagnosis. So I think those little actually leaning in at that time to those moments that sometimes don't present themselves again actually means that the whole process, by the time you get to the end and you're actually talking about understanding and how to help, you're much further along and you've brought the family, with you on the journey.
And again, like I'm hearing that relationship flavor in that too, where you're thinking about, well, how are we going to like work together in these spaces around what's happening for your young person, and how even as a family, you're going to like engage with us around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the goal is about how we understand the young person, but then how that information about their young person lands with the parent, sibling, and definitely school systems around them. So that's what we're often talking about we do multiple case conferences with everyone in the team to discuss that young person. And that really would be what we talk most about. The diagnostic piece is often, when you've been in it a long time, not super unclear. You see the patterns quite quickly, but landing that information into the family or the school system, that's the bit that needs nuance and a little bit of a brain's trust to think about how we're going to message it, which person we need to really focus in on and why. And what we do love about private is there's much more of an intervention focus. So which are the interventions that we think are going to help this family and why, so that we can actually give families real information about their little system, and how they want to produce change or commit to change if they want to.
It just it strikes me, Jordana and Kerri, like such a fantastic both ends with diagnosis and systemic practice. And I know that sometimes some people get a little like concerned about diagnosis and pathologizing. But gosh, sometimes it's useful. And yeah, I'd love to hear a little more about how you guys kind of blend the two, like for the benefit of the kids and their families and all of the other systems around them.
Yeah, I can just start, but I think, it's what you mean by diagnosis. And really what we mean by diagnosis is understanding. And so diagnostic understanding, you can actually leave the diagnosis out. It's about understanding. And I think at its heart, it's about, labels don't really matter. It is about understanding and understanding the functional impact so that you can support skill development and that goodness of fit. And I think the other thing is that, sorry.
You want me to say something?
Yeah.
We actually had this debate today, so it's interesting you brought that up. And I think it's a complicated one, but I suppose that why we're passionate about child development is because development is organic. It is a part of who we are. We all have a different myriad of strengths and weaknesses that doesn't make us wrong or make us bad. So whilst we do label and I guess pathologize, we're quite careful about the labels we use, and they are often very much developmentally entrenched rather than, we don't use labels like oppositional or, that are more behaviorally judgy or, imply a certain type of behavior. But we are passionate about understanding neurodifference. I think we do feel the whole world probably has a neurotype, and that's wonderful and fabulous. And we work in a system, an education system, that does require us to get A, Bs, and Cs, and does require us to have friends and fit into certain social constructs. So for our gorgeous young people who have different neurotypes to the majority, they very quickly feel quite different and develop their own narrative and story. And so we feel we have real power in being able to reframe that story, is that you have a brain that's busy, and that's amazing. You have less, your social battery is smaller than other people's, and that is wonderful. So it feels like a pathologizing that actually can be a very lovely narrative story that can reframe not just the child's experience, but the family's experience of the child. And ideally the ripple effect to others. But that's, I think, why we feel passionately about it. But yeah, it's not diagnosis for diagnosis' sake. It's the power of understanding and how that can then change a system.
I love that. As soon as you spoke, when Kerri started and said diagnosis or understanding, that just really resonated with me, and I can hear the passion in both your voices. And I know personally as well as professionally, just what a difference understanding can make and the relief it can provide for people.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we're always looking for the aha moments. We don't always get them, but it's that moment where things just click differently for a parent system.
Yeah.
And there are themes. It is often, what did a lovely mum say this week? Kerri was crying and Kerri did her lovely lean in. Now she's leaning in all the time. I have to push her back.
Push her back.
She
up.
saying she said, I was so nervous waiting and coming in, and then she got quite teary, and we kind of assumed it was a fear of diagnosis, and she just said, I'm so scared you're going to say that everything I'm saying is invalid and that there's nothing here that you're seeing. So yeah, it's a both and. I think pathology should be done very carefully. And we're already doing that. We're already categorizing kids. We're already popping them into boxes. So how can we also give other messages? Yeah, is important. But we take a lot of care with our mental health diagnoses, and we try not to do adjunct pathologies. We try to be very descriptive. If that makes sense. So we try to be quite specific in the young person's profile to moderate that.
I love that. And thinking about that understanding, I was having this vision of you then on the ground with the families, with the young people. Tell me, how does that all work when you're in the therapy room? You've got parents, you've maybe got siblings, you've got the client, the young person, and you're working with all these different brains and these different understandings. Tell me how that actually works. Give me your hot tips.
Well, I guess it does become, I think that's the thing, isn't it? About once you get used to working in a certain way, there's something about you do this for so many hours and then it becomes part of you and you just can't not do it. And I think probably that is, where we're at. It sort of is, but when you do sort of actually specifically think about it, yes, there is lots of people in the room trying to be ahead of the game in terms of, like what we bring from the initial session, what we know about parents. It's not just our family histories aren't just, is there a history of, neurodiversity? It's about often it's really interesting actually when you just ask a broad question, what they actually bring to the table and how useful that often is in terms of, for example, what's triggered them. Like why would a mum's first, thought be that you're going to say it's me? It's not my child, it's me. And, so asking about, trauma as well, people's response to that will always be, oh, what do you mean? And my response back is, it means whatever you think trauma has been to you. And again, it's really interesting what they bring, but that information I think really helps you when you go to the other end and you've got all those people in the room, because you can already have a hypothesis that actually this message is going to be easier for mum than dad. And actually then you can take care in terms of checking in. So, what's that like to hear, Dad? How are you going to, what's that going to be like if you're a very regimented person and you've just heard that your young person is, really struggles with time management and organization, and you talked about how hard that was. So what's this like to hear? What does that mean for you? So I think that's I
think that's a really good example of, it's not just about delivering the diagnosis, but it's about understanding how the family understand it, how the family going to respond to it, thinking with them about how it does land for them in terms of as a way of understanding their young person.
Absolutely. And I think the way we do it, I was just thinking about your question, is that we do a lot around the formulation, and that's done like we've talked earlier. But then the other piece, and this is what I love as a family therapist, is you cannot assume just because you've got the formulation and then you sprout it or then you share it, that even that languaging is going to be absorbed, or are they able to be reflective, or are they even understanding? There's lots of assumptions we can make because my brain's going off and I'm super excited about this systemic formulation formulation we've just developed, but that landing within a system and potentially our cohort, because we're in a developmental space, we have been curious about kind of the overlay in the parent system, that potentially regulation's not just hard for the little person, but maybe regulation is organically hard for that family system, and to be very careful then with our languaging and assumptions in how we then message even what that little person needs in a system that potentially is doing its very best, but doesn't always have the skills either. So it's this lovely kind of messy interplay with the young person's development, but also the parents and the siblings, and then how those messages can land. And I think that is the beauty of a multidisciplinary team. Like, I use a lot of words. I like to be quite didactic, and I'm not a roll around on the floor, but we do have roll around on the floor therapists, or, using lots of visuals, using lots of games and play and toys, and being very careful, lots of checking in, being careful about language. Yeah.
I was just thinking, Geordie, when you're talking about, reflection and, the biology, I guess, of neurodevelopment, and that I think it's been a really positive thing for me how often our families, have come back and said, oh, actually, so after we understood our little person, I've actually been thinking about myself. And so I've actually gone off and, done some, seen someone or done some more thinking about it. And, I think, that they actually come back. So I think that actually how you share the information sort of almost empowers them to be brave enough to do that.
So the parents can understand themselves as well.
So in the process, and that's happened actually a lot, and it's been quite
connect with those dominant stories for them as young people, which is really lovely, and then being able to connect that for them to their own children and how they would like that to be different. It's really powerful and lovely.
It just, as you were both talking, I was thinking about that systemic lens and how you're holding everyone in mind, and almost kind of like mentalizing all of the family members and their families they come from, as you try to sensitively share your formulation and grow understanding. And it sounded like that was challenging and at times, and then it got me thinking, is that the biggest challenge? Or in your work in child development, what is the most challenging part of being systemic?
We had a few ideas. I mean, I guess in child development, I suppose it lends itself very nicely, because child development is quite messy and it's multifaceted, and we need lots of information to fuse into one. But I guess the complication then of that, which is mirrored, is it's messy. So if you're quite linear and you like a nice, even, let's do this checklist and knock out a diagnosis and get this done, then potentially this isn't the model for you. But I think there is a real, if you can embrace the messy and you can really mentalize to the best of your abilities, like, I don't think we're perfectionists, but I think it is about being able to privilege and hold that in mind in some way. Then we trust that we will diffuse that to the best end point. Whereas I think if that feels it's messy, I suppose, and not linear.
Got to go with the mess.
You've got to go with the mess. And what do you think, Kerri, are other challenges?
Well, I think there's probably, we sort of talked about, there's sort of clinical challenges, but there's also, at that sort of, business level, I guess, there were those challenges in the beginning, probably, accountants were, really interested. Oh, that sounds amazing.
But then you want a doctor and an allied health in the room at the same time, and you want to charge them?
Yeah.
No, just one charge. Yes. That and Medicare, there was a lot of accountancy pushback
of that, and
they have figured it out with us. But
but that was actually really hard. So holding true to no, this is what we want to do, and you have to help us figure out how to do that. you know. And I guess the other thing, so that was, you know, at a business level, but, you know, when we, you know, said this is what we're going to do in the beginning, there was a lot of, well, you won't be able to do that in private. Like that was actually a lot of, you know, what people's first sort of, you know, reactions were. It was just like, not, oh, well, see how you go. It was just, yeah, no, that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to do that. So, and yeah, so it's interesting to think, you know, now backwards, because at the time we just went, yeah, no, we're going to do it because it's important and we're passionate about it, and actually it's good for families, it will be good for us, and it's the right.
We don't want to do it the other way.
Yeah, we don't want to do it the other way. That's right.
And the other thing, sorry, that's jumped into my head is we wanted a very reflective model. We came from a reflective space in our government experience. So that's probably worked, but been tricky because obviously you've got private practitioners. If they're reflecting, they're not earning. But yes, in theory, they're not earning. You know, they have to then, like, people work different days, and it's actually quite difficult to do. So that is something we would say is worth pushing, like to enforce it, just to say from the get-go, reflection time and space is going to be a priority, and to recruit people that are invested in that kind of a model, because I think it's very hard to do once you're busy. Really hard privately to then retrospectively kind of introduce reflective moments. And that's like, we often, especially around our assessment, we'll always have a half-hour gap before the next family so that we can sit and reflect, think about our own practice, how we came to the table, as well as the family. We do multidisciplinary case conferences. You can do that in private, and we highly recommend doing that. To be able to privilege time where we can all be, and we do pay our staff for that. So that is a cost that we believe in and think is worth it. And then there's lots of supervision and lots of reflecting space. But it's trickier because people have to commit their time. So that does, I think, also require a little bit of push.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love this little segue then. I'm going to run with it. Tell us, if there's people listening that work in child developmental spaces, they're thinking about systemic, they're thinking about working more with families and building their systemic framework. What's your hot tips? What do you think are some helpful things for them to think about? They might not have the luxury of being in such an amazing systemic clinic. So on the ground, like, what's some things that you're thinking could be helpful?
I think, I suppose it's, you know, as I said, when I reflect back, it seems like, oh, we did something hard retrospectively, but at the time it was just, I don't know, it was just like, this is the way we want to do it, not in a rigid way, but, you know, it's about, you know, this systemic model is really important to us. So we're going to figure out how it would work. So I think maybe one of the things is just hold on to your passion and the conviction that actually it can be done, and it's actually important to do, and it should be done because it's good for everybody.
Love that, Kerri. That for you, Jordana, any other thoughts to that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think if you want to do systemic work, then you have to make your framework and model systemic. It just has to mirror. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in all sorts of little places. So I just think if that's the work you want to do, then commit to that model at all levels, at a micro direct level and at a macro business level, at a collegial level. Because, so really upfront thinking is systemic, our primary principle, then that's what we're going to model everything else off, and then it becomes easy. It's not hard at the moment. It's 4 years in and it feels super organic and easy and automated. So it is hard work in the thinking, but actually it's worth it because it's really easy once it's in place.
And I can imagine then that just directs all the other pieces. And I've been to your clinic and you can feel it when you walk in, that kind of family vibe. You know, there's even like seating for the adults, areas for the kids. You know, it's kind of got that real family focus. And I can picture that if you've got the model and you've got the values and the passion around it, then all the pieces that you develop from that are kind of naturally there then.
Yeah, it's worth the effort. Yeah.
I just want to just say how much I appreciate hearing about the systemic influence across all of those different layers and just, the thoughtfulness and commitment, as well as the passion that you guys are sharing. Just, yeah, just really appreciate being able to talk with you about it.
Having us. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
No worries. And we haven't quite nailed our ending rituals, as you would have heard in episode 1. But is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you want to let us know, or you think the people listening would want to know as we end?
We thought about this. It might be a bit corny, but
I love corny. Do it, Jordana.
It does mirror the clinic room with the business model, similar vibe. But I guess, when it's feeling messy and chaotic, you're probably on the edge of something really magical. And I think you just need to sit with that discomfort because, we can promise nearly every time there's something, magic will happen next. So that's my advice is, when you do a big thing like start a business, you want things to line up. Your accountant wants things to line up. Your business planner wants things to line up. But systemic is organically quite messy because you're holding a lot in mind. So yeah, just being really confident that you're doing it with purpose and that something great's going to happen from it.
Yeah, and do it with someone who you trust and respect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, ditto.
Thanks, Kerri. What a great ending. We couldn't ask for more.
I love that. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us, guys. And congratulations on your podcast.
Yes.
Thank
you. See you.
Okay, so everyone, we're just going to have a little wrap up. Is going to be sort of one of our ending rituals, and gosh, Laura, that was so fantastic. I just loved speaking with Jordana and Kerri and hearing about the systemic practice with child development, and so I guess like for our little final ending ritual, we're gonna each share some highlights from the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, so Leonie, you start. What caught your attention?
Okay. Well, a couple of things. Well, lots really, but I'm going to try to stick to my key highlights. I think the first one was just how passionate they both are, and I really caught that. And gosh, I just really love the way that feels because it's so important to me as well to bring systemic practice to the community. And then I really was so impressed by the thoughtfulness and intentionality right from the very beginning of setting up the business, of bringing systemic practice in, so multi-layered across all levels of the business.
Isn't it so exciting? Yeah.
Oh, and the persistence. Because I was thinking, like in Australia, systemic family therapy and systemic practice isn't like it's not broadly known, right? And so I was picturing their accountant just being completely shocked, like with no frame of reference for what systemic practice is. And I was picturing that kind of pushback. And I just love, that, stick with it, have faith, believe, and the magic will come. What about you?
Yeah, I think I was also super impressed with their journey that they've been on. It sounds like there's been lots of invitations, maybe not to do what they're doing, but they persisted.
Yeah.
And the bit that landed heavy with me was that idea of understanding, how like a diagnosis is about understanding. And they were talking about how that helps the young person understand themselves, the family understand the young person, and perhaps even themselves as parents. And it was also sitting in the wider system, like the school system, about how they understand the young person too. And I just think that's so powerful as a priority, and you can really see how that would shift things significantly for the young person with that kind of detailed understanding.
Yeah.
And because I'm an OT, I also saw lots of practical tips. So let me highlight a few that I really love.
I love that. We love a good practical tip.
I love this idea of like who's in the room right from the start. So they were talking about how parents are invited early and often.
Both parents.
Both parents are, yeah. And I thought that was really cool to set the scene right from the get-go. I heard them talk about this messy middle and how you move through that with the family and stay in it and hang in and lean in, as they were saying. I heard this idea of the power of reflection and slowing down the thinking and gaining perspectives. I think that is such a really rich practical tip. And, we often don't, some of us don't have the luxury of having lots of practitioners around us, but we all have the ability to reflect, even if it's just individually. So I was really hearing the power in that to hold on to the systemic frame and think differently and bring in different kind of lenses and perspectives as they work with the young people. So I thought that was a great list of practical tips.
Yeah. Well, I think the four of us did fantastic for our second episode, but our first episode with guests. And so just lots of gratitude for that as well. And I guess that's it for episode 2. Shall we sign off?
Sounds good. We'll see you for episode 3.
All right. Bye, everyone.
See ya.